Oh, didn't get that. Cool. Okay, so let me share our screen here. Go there and there, and we are in business. Put this down a little bit and go to that and that. Okay, welcome. Happy Sunday. Good to be with you all. Welcome back to our Adult Sunday School again, last Sunday in June. So we're talking in the time frame, going beyond the Tower of Babel, getting ready for the world of Abraham and the Egypt he's going to encounter. That's going to prefigure the Israelites in Egypt. And so all that stuff going on. We're following right now the line of Ham, Noah's son. And they're spread into the land of Egypt and the things that take place there. So let's start up here. So we're in the 2400s BC. We're dealing with the time frame where Shem is still alive. There are like 5 generations still alive right now. Shem, his son Arphaxad, Shelah, Eber, and then Peleg, who's born after the Tower of Babel. So this is the world that he is growing up in that we are seeing here. So we'll get our presentation kicked off and going. So where we left off last week, we went to, okay, you are here. Where we left off last week, we were talking about the epic battle between the followers of Horus and the followers of Seth. Well, what does all that mean here? Well, Horus was a name. First, that's the wrong one. Go here. Horus was the name given to, first and foremost, Noah. Relates to the falcon, the hawk, the sky. They kind of throw it all together in the lore of Egypt. And let's see, go back just one back. There we go. And so Noah was considered the far distant because in mythology, after the flood, he was given eternal life and put back in the far distant land of Eden. So Noah is the first Horus. And the pharaohs, when they take on the name, just like Caesar Augustus, Caesar Nero, when they take on the name Horus, they're actually taking on the name Noah, referencing back to that. And so every time that they would have this situation of elevating someone like the pharaoh and the king to a god status, it'd be picturing this imagery from heaven, you know, the bird coming down and showing them where the holy sites were, by where it landed, and that kind of thing. So birds and mountains are very common spiritual imageries in Egypt. So the followers of Horus are the followers of Ham's son Mizraim, who took on that Horus name and his symbol of the disc, like the sun with the wings. And so he went in and he settled in the land of Egypt before the Tower of Babel. So the followers of Horus, such a Christian, great to see. And so the followers of Horus were followers of Mizraim, Noah's son. Well, Cush is also known as, in Egypt, as Seth, Lord Chaos. Cush's name is actually where we get our word for chaos. And so those who were banished from the tower, dispersed from the Tower of Babel, they said, hey, we're related to this guy over here, so we're going to be followers of him. So they consider themselves followers of Seth, followers of Cush, followers of Chaos. So you got these two brothers and people claiming their names and following them, and they have this epic battle here. And these are what's happening with the sons of Ham. And so the Scorpion King is ruling the followers of Horus down here. And this is, think of Egypt in 2 parts, upper and north and south. South is called upper and north is called lower because of the way the Nile flows from bottom to top. So here in the bottom half of Egypt is where this is all happening. So the Scorpion King, he's ruling, he's one of those followers of Horus. He goes down south to further stretch out his kingdom. Well, these invaders from the Tower of Babel, these followers of Seth, they take the opportunity while Scorpion King's away and they come on down and try to take some territory. Well, Scorpion King hears that, doesn't like that. He turns around, goes up, and he fights the followers of Seth. So we have this epic battle here, the contest of Horus and Seth. The pictures of these gods, that people who've been elevated to God status. This is the battle of the brothers, the battle of Ham's sons, Mizraim and Cush and their followers. Scorpion King wins, kills the guy, harpoons him, cuts off his head, drags him through the streets and all that stuff. And so Scorpion King says, okay, we're not going to let this happen again. So this whole bottom half of Egypt, he unites and unifies. So it's all one nation now under him. And this is before all of Egypt is brought together under a single dynasty, the first dynasty. So this time they kind of call it Dynasty Zero. It's like the prequel to that. And so that's what we're looking at now. So in the week of fighting after this battle, after he battles the invaders from the Tower of Babel, he solidifies all of that. So this is the time frame we're picking up on. After Scorpion, the leader of the Horus folks, has defeated the invaders from the Tower of Babel, the followers of Seth. So he goes and he sets up a new capital over here in this place called, in the Greeks, they call it Thinis, and the Egypt, they call it Tenju. It's in a place called Gerga right now. And so let me get this situated here, kind of give you an idea where this is at. No, I don't need that. No notifications. Thank you very much, Amazon. Go away. Okay, there we are. So this is where that place is at. Let's zoom out a bit here. So the battle took place right here on the Nile River, just outside where the temple of Horus at Edfu is that we looked at last time. So now they set up their capital here. And here is the delta where later on Abraham and Joseph and Jacob and Moses would all be. And so that's their new capital they set up for this United Kingdom in the south here. And they also had their burial grounds here. Again, these are all considered holy sites because their leaders are elevated to God status. And so we have right here, this is the tomb of the Scorpion King that has been discovered from this time frame. Again, Shem's alive for this. Peleg is going up in this world while all this is happening. Let's see, what else did I want to say about this? And one of the reasons this burial ground is so holy to them is because in their lore, Osiris was killed, was dismembered, and his body parts spread all over the place. So Hathor goes, his wife goes ahead and picks up the pieces, puts them all together, makes the first mummy. Crazy stuff, I know. But this is where they believe that Osiris's head was buried. So they don't want to be buried where their god's head was buried. That's what motivates and drives them. So that is that. And there are actually thousands of graves that have been put there since then, as we see that continuing on. And it's again that same motif of the bird and the mound. So that's something that keeps going on. Let's go over here. Now, the scripture, FY, that we're going to be looking at, if you want to go ahead and open to it or find it, is the book of Hosea. Going to be looking at a few things there. I'm actually going to start that earlier in the day today because there's some really important verses I want to touch on. As we're looking at and contrasting two things, remember here, we're looking at seekings of man as an example here with the line of Ham and what they're doing versus the unchanging goodness of our God. And we're seeing that throughout the Old Testament. We know the law of Moses was closed out, but the rest of the Old Testament wasn't. It's still in effect. These powerful words we're going to see in the book of Hosea are still true today. So I'm looking forward to getting to that. So we won't spend as much time on the line of Ham this morning. Some good stuff there in Hosea. So this burial place outside of Abydos. Abydos is the Greek word for abyss. And that's where they actually, on this lake outside of Abydos, they actually have ceremonies where they reenact this battle that took place. So in Egyptian tradition, they have, we know of Civil War reenactments and things like that. Well, here they reenact this battle. And so they commemorate and remember there's a big deal to them when the South got unified here in Egypt and they defeated these invaders from the Tower of Babel. It's a very important event in their history that they celebrate and reenact. So that's all taking place in the South. Anyone, any thoughts, questions on what's happening there? So it's all unified now after Scorpion King. So that's the south of Egypt. What's going on up in the north of Egypt? Well, we're going to take a look up there. Now, here in the north, this is the Delta area where all the good land is as the Nile spreads out, getting ready to pour into the Mediterranean here. Well, these folks who are up here, they're enjoying a good time. They're trading, across the Mediterranean Sea with all these folks up here. But what they're doing is they're trading stuff they're getting from over here. Well, that's also stuff that the guys in the south are grabbing and getting and trading, going around Saudi Arabia. So they're all grabbing the same stuff. Well, there's only so much stuff. So there ends up that there's going to be a contest between them fighting over the stuff. But up here in the Mediterranean, this is where a lot of the New Testament churches were started, over here in Europe. Let me zoom in, get another look right here. The Bible tells us that Mizraim fathered Caphtorim, from whom came the Philistines. So where do all these people and names we hear in the Bible come from? Well, the Philistines that he's talking about were their original homeland. Is Italy over here. Here's Crete. It's all this whole area here, the Greek islands, Cyprus, and Turkey, all coming down. They came from here. The word Palestine comes from Philistine. The word Philistine comes from the Pelopian Greeks. And so that's where that all comes from. It comes down. So right now they're all up here. They're trading with these folks in the north of Egypt and having a good old time. They'll end up coming down and becoming the Philistines that we know of through the Bible. One of the interesting things that happened as we're looking back and seeing this time frame here in Egypt, well, we've got these folks in north and south and a big battle that's going to come between them. We see, as we're looking at these graves and these histories, we see these are made out of bone. These are tags that are describing, and these it looks like these were put on grave goods when people were buried and stuff was buried with them, because we don't want them to go on their next journey empty-handed. So this is the first writing in Egypt. These are the first hieroglyphs in Egypt. But what's interesting about these is they look like pictures of objects, but actually these are pictures of sounds. So they're starting to actually write words for how to say things, what they're talking about. So these are for numbers of stuff that are buried in the graves. But here's what's interesting about all this is nothing like this ever happened before in Egypt. This just poof came out of nowhere. Well, no, it came from somewhere. Writing we saw was invented with Nimrod over there in the land of Sumer, the land of Mesopotamia, land of Shinar. So as the invaders from the Tower of Babel came over, they brought technology with them. And so this is where all of a sudden, and they're actually kind of stumped about this because they say there's nothing in Egypt's history to explain this. This didn't grow and develop naturally. No, it showed up. Remember, when God confused the languages and dispersed them, they all took that with them where they went. And so while the invaders from the Tower of Babel were defeated, their advances were adopted and carried forward. So Egypt was able to go forward into its things thanks to the Tower of Babel and the invaders. And so it built up from there. Let's see what we got here. There's also writing on this. This is ceremonial, wasn't actually used. It was just for ceremony purposes. This is a mace that was basically a big ball on a stick that you would whack people with. And so, but this one was very nicely designed, and it has the first writing on it also from this time period. This was from King Scorpion, the Scorpion King. All this intricate detail that they are doing, showing the advancement of their society. And so we go on from here. In the Scorpion King's tomb, by the way, I want to mention this side note. They're seeing in his tomb evidence of wine consumption. They found dozens of, let's see what it says here, imported ceramic jars that contained a yellow residue that was consistent with wine, chemical residues of herbs, tree resins, other natural substances found in these jars, grape seeds, skins, and dried pulp also found in the tomb. This is 4,400 years ago that they're still seeing this stuff and able to identify it. So that's pretty wild. So this is the area where, let's see, NAHOR, the guy who followed Scorpion King, he's buried over here, B1, B2. So there's going to be just a line of rulers that keep following as this dynasty wraps up. This is from another pharaoh named Ka. This vessel here, again, this is over in the British Museum right now. These are things that we can go see. These are things that, with their permission, we could touch and feel that were in existence. Shem was alive and could have gone and touched and felt this thing that we're looking at right here. That's from his time frame, when the time that he was alive. Shem on down to Peleg. So as this society is developing, right under that. And this guy Kav is also buried in that same area up here, B7, B9. But this isn't the only place life is happening. Who's ever heard of yin and yang? You know, positive, negative, you know, balance of things. Well, that concept, that philosophy of nature develops in China during the same time frame. The guy leading over there, Emperor Fu Xi, is talking about health and tranquility, requiring this equilibrium, balance of the 5 elements that they thought of at the time: wood, fire, earth, metal, water. And at the time, they were aware of 5 planets, because that's how many you can see with the naked eye. The number 5 meant something. They had 5 seasons, 5 primary colors, 5 sounds, senses, 5 organs, 5 tastes. And so that was their way of looking at things and understanding the balance and harmony in nature. Male and female, male yang and the female yin. Sickles invented in Sumeria around this time. And Stonehenge starts to get built around this time. So life is happening and spreading while all of these things are going on. While Peleg's growing up and the next generations are continuing. So the final battle between North and South in the conflict comes through this guy named Narmer, who has a connection that we're going to see here. So Tower of Babel, dispersion, everyone goes their ways, but look at what they all kind of have in common. So we've got, as an example here, Nimrod, Lord of Heaven, Tammuz, the son, or the Messiah picture, who's technically Nimrod's grandson, actually. Then you have the wife, Semiramis, the queen of heaven. Well, look at all these different versions of the same thing. In Israel, false gods that they would worship, Baal. You know, we see very common in the Old Testament literature. Baal, the son Tammuz, and Baal's consort, Baal's companion, is the Ashtoreth. They set up the wooden groves in honor of her. So that's what the Israelites often fell into. Phoenicians, they had El and Bacchus and Astarte. Babylon, Belus, Tammuz, and Rhea or Ishtar. Assyria, the god Ninus, Hercules, and Beltis. In Greece, of course, they have Zeus, Dionysius, and Aphrodite. Over in Rome, Zeus would become Jupiter, and they would have Attis and Cybele or Diana. In Ephesus, in the book of Acts, Paul got into trouble because those who were worshiping the temple of Diana were getting threatened by this god that Paul is preaching about. In Egypt, we have the sun god Ra. We have Osiris and Horus, that we've been talking about, Isis and Hathor. Over in India, they got Vishnu and Krishna and Isi and Devaki. In China, they have Panku and Yi and Hengu or Matsupo. In Mexico, they have Teotl, Quetzalcoatl, and Coatlicue. I keep wanting to say Coatletus or something, but I get that mixed up. And even in Scandinavia, of course, they've got Odin and Balder and Odin's wife, Frigg or Freyja. So all these versions of the same thing are being spread throughout the world. But it's a constant theme that people are taking with them.
There's a religion today that I came across on something, and they talk about Ra still.
Oh yeah.
Today. So that's kind of interesting to me, because when you look at the rest of the list, you know, Zeus, well, we all know that's mythology. You know, Odin, okay, that's Thor, right?
Or is that Anthony Hopkins?
Yeah, that's Anthony Hopkins from Thor. But I came across this religion today called Kemeticism in Egypt or Africa, and they still refer to Ra. So that, I guess, because we've talked about idols so much the past couple of weeks. So if all of this is just another name for Nimrod.
Yes. It all starts somewhere.
Yeah.
Everything has a source.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to see even in Egypt with the unify of the whole nation of Egypt, the birth of the nation of Egypt, as we see, and what that has to do with this guy, Nimrod. Remember last year, the end of last year, after the very last class, I showed an image of the Holy Family of Nimrod and his wife and the child. And then I showed a picture of the Holy Family of Joseph and Mary and the child. And the Mary and the child Jesus were the exact same statue of Semiramis and Nimrod's son Tammuz. And how Catholicism, for example, has adopted that imagery of the whole Madonna image and all that and brought it into its world. I grew up going to Holy Family Catholic Church, and those statues were there. So that's what I saw. So yeah.
I'm sorry, but with the thing that I came across, they were saying that the Old Testament was stolen from these old gods, Ra, and all this other stuff. And that they were saying, you know, that all of these other, you know, Christ and all these other things were borrowed. You know, they weren't, the old gods were what was first.
Mm-hmm.
And that Christianity piggybacked on to that.
Here's what they miss, and this will come up on Wednesday nights when we get to Romans chapter 11. Christianity, understand when I say this, is not something new. I know it's 2,000 years old to us today, but even when Christ established Christianity, he was not inventing something new. Now, the church is a new vehicle that he established in his lifetime, the Christian, quote unquote, New Testament church, but that was a part of something that was already established from Adam on down. This is all the one way of worship for the one true Almighty God. And so Christianity does not contradict the Old Testament, where the law of Moses was fulfilled, but the principles still apply. The rest of the Old Testament, we are still under. We are not New Testament church in the sense that we don't follow the Old Testament. We follow the Old Testament. All the Old Testament, that's still in effect. We are Judeo-Christians. We have been brought in, this is what Romans 11 talks about. We have been brought into the olive tree that has, we've been branched, our branch has been grafted in to what's always been here. So Christianity didn't come and take something away that and steal from anyone before there was anything. The Lord says, I am God and there is no other before me. I'm the only God. There is no other God. There is no other God, period. There's no other God before me. He is the origin. He is the Alpha Omega. He is the source. One true God, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one word here. So that claim that, hey, you guys just took and ran with and made your own thing. No, we go back. This is a whole issue with the Jews and the Holy Land. People saying, hey, you're taking this land from us. Well, no, the Jews were there first. They actually had that land quite some time ago, given to them by God. So if you want to talk about deeds and contracts, here it is right here.
But then it all comes down to your view, right?
Sure.
You have to start with God.
Absolutely.
In the beginning was the Word.
Absolutely.
Right? You have to start there. If you don't start there, then you can take liberties with any kind of a timeline, right?
Absolutely. So
the basis of it has to line up with Scripture, not some millions of years or some different timeline. Because the whole like I kind of found with some other types of religions, the whole thing is it was started by someone else. I just watched this thing on Mormonism, and it was this Christian gentleman and this Mormon gentleman, and they were debating and stuff. And the Christian gentleman they were actually in Israel, and it was really, really neat because he was taking them down to the caves where they had found the Dead Sea Scrolls and all this stuff. And the Christian gentleman was like, here's where, here's the actual physical proof, right? Here's where they found, and the Mormon guy was like, yeah. And so he asked him, he said, okay, so where are Joseph Smith's golden tablets? Where's the proof? And the Mormon guy was like, well, the angels took them back up to heaven. So there was a disagreement there, because even, the Mormon guy was like, well, we have these wonderful things, but Joseph Smith said, You know, so to put your faith into something that a man said in the 1800s versus what the actual physical proof is, because seriously, the archaeological stuff, I'm like,
Sure.
you know, I don't have the, that's not my, I don't have the
Sure.
brain power for that. But I appreciate that you have that, like you said, when you have something tangible, that even if the archaeologists don't share the same worldview as us or religious view, we can still see where it fits in with the Bible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Again, everything that happened, we know someone from the Bible who's alive for it.
Yeah.
So we can place that and identify it and anchor that. And the whole Mormonism, again, the institution, not the people, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, because in their view, the original church died out. Well, when? Where? Christ says, I'm with my church always, even unto the end of the age. Upon this rock I build my church, gates of hell won't prevail against it. Jesus promises his church is still here today. We just have to find it, be sure that's where we're at, where we're a part of. And as far as scriptures go, of all ancient books, whether you're talking about the books about Caesar, or you're talking about the works of Homer, the Iliad, and the Odyssey, all these different things, of all these ancient literatures that we study in school, nothing comes close to the Bible as far as how many copies we have of these scriptures and how old those copies are. If we recognize that what we have from Homer with the Iliad and the Odyssey is legitimate, that's what he wrote, and these copies are good, well, then we have no excuse for not accepting the Bible, because we got so many more copies of that and so much older copies than we do of the writings of Homer. So if the same standard applies, then the Bible is backed up by facts. The Bible is backed up by science. It does not contradict. We don't have faith and we turn our brains off. No, we have faith for the things we don't know, but God equips us to know a lot. Taste and see that the Lord is good. The word of God is tested. So yeah, some good stuff there. So let's wrap up this Egypt stuff with Narmer and getting ready for the unification of Egypt. Then we'll go to the book of Hosea. So this guy, Narmer, this is a very famous object here, the Narmer palette. That's the back and the front of it, showing Narmer leading the way, where his son Aha or Minas will be following him and doing the completion of the unifying of Egypt. This guy shows him with his mace up here, smiting his enemy as they conquer the north. Well, what's interesting here is right behind him, he's got this little thing here. That's a rosette, a 6-petal rosette. So historians look at that and they say, okay, that's just a symbol of royalty or something. But actually, that means something special, not in Egypt, but back in Mesopotamia. When Nimrod built the Tower of Babel in Eridu, and he also built the temple in Uruk, was a worship temple for the goddess Inanna that was brought down from the land of Eden, perversion of Eve that this was. So Inanna's symbol was this 6-petaled rosette right here. So this is the goddess from Sumeria who's brought over to Egypt. This guy, Nimrod.
6-petal rosette, what, the little guy?
Yeah, right above his head there.
Oh,
yeah, right there. And so if Narmer, NMR, it has with him this symbol of the goddess of Enmer, NMR, the hunter, Ixmeria, whom we know as Nimrod the hunter in the Bible. This pharaoh, Narmer, could very well be Nimrod himself, conquering Egypt, north and south, which would be carried out by his son. And so that is one of the serious considerations here. So imagine that while he's ruling Uruk, he comes down, helps his people clear the way here, spreads out the kingdom here in Egypt. And there are different legends, the different versions of Nimrod, Venus and Semiramis and all of them going out and conquering Egypt. So imagine him coming in and conquering and then putting it all on a cylinder seal that could roll out and tell the story. Well, that's exactly what we have right here. This was found in Iran. This was found over near Susa and all that. But here he is wearing the white crown of Egyptian royalty. Here he is with the symbol of the moon, which was being worshipped over there in Sumeria. Here's his wife being carried on this palanquin. So here we see this guy conquering in Egypt, but he's from Mesopotamia. He's from the land of Sumer, the land of Shinar, where the Tower of Babel was. So here we have a connection of Nimrod to Egypt. Here we have, and we'll show some other things real quick as we wrap up here. Mesopotamian style, all Egyptian decorations and motifs. Here we have the leader here, the ruler here, a version of Nimrod, but with this style of architecture, niche facade where the paneling kind of goes it has these little niches in there. That was done in Mesopotamia, but it starts to show up here in Egypt. Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm not correct. Why is it significant?
Because this shows that Egypt came from Nimrod of the Bible.
Okay.
This shows the connections here at this time frame after the Tower of Babel. Great question.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So it's showing basically all this influence from Mesopotamia, where Nimrod is ruling, coming into and infiltrating Egypt. Egypt under Mizraim was kind of keeping its peace, whatever. Then as Nimrod comes in, then Scorpion King has his battles, then Narmer comes in after him. And so we see all of this happening right as a result of the Tower of Babel, spurring all of this on. So that's where all of this comes from. And so his son will continue on from him and will do the final unifying of the land of Egypt. And that right there is the final resting place of Narmer. So that could very well be the tomb of Nimrod. It's a very real possibility there. So let's close out that. Go back over here, stop the screen share. Get back over here and let's close in Hosea. So again, we've seen the spreading of people, the seekings of man, all they're doing out there. Now let's get back to the goodness of God. Now, to appreciate what's going on in the book of Hosea, we have to read verse 2 of chapter 1. Hosea 1, verse 2 sets the stage for all of this. Now, think about this as we've been talking about idols and whatnot. Hosea 1, verse 2. When the Lord first spoke through Hosea, the Lord said to Hosea, "Go, take yourself a wife of harlotry and have children of harlotry. For the land commits flagrant harlotry, forsaking the Lord." Wow, that's a way to start. Now, there's a question of whether or not he went and married someone who was already a harlot, or he married someone who ended up being unfaithful to him in the marriage. Either way, this is what God told him to go do, as a picture of what his own people were doing. So that's pretty significant. And that sets the stage for everything else that's said here. But I thought you were talking, Brother Eric, about the goodness of God. That's what we're going to see here, despite this picture of unfaithfulness. As we saw, those idols, the Baals, the Ashtoreths, all these different things that even the Lord's people find themselves chasing and following, that we're going to see through Hosea, as this man of God is told, go marry someone who's going to be unfaithful to you. And then continue on from there. So go down to chapter 2. Let's look what God says about dealing with all this, starting in verse 14. Despite all this adultery, despite all this idolatry, the Lord says in Hosea 2:14, "Therefore, behold, I will allure her, bring her into the wilderness, and speak kindly to her. Then I will give her her vineyards from there, and the valley of Achor as a door of hope. And she will sing there as in the days of her youth, as in the day when she came up from the land of Egypt." Again, there's the picture of salvation, being freed from bondage, but it goes on from there. Verse 16, very key. "It will come about in that day, declares the Lord, that you will call me Ishi and will no longer call me Baal. You will call me my husband and no longer call me my master." So here we are in the Old Testament. God is saying, I'm going to speak to him despite your adultery, despite your idolatry. I'm going to desire you. I'm going to reach out to you. I'm going to bring you back, speak kindly to you. And in that day, as you're going to remember being freed from Egypt, as I bring you into the land and restore you, You're no longer going to call me master. You're going to call me husband. Not just husband, but my husband. This is the intimate relationship the Lord is desiring with his people even back then, during this time of Hosea. Verse 19, I will betroth you to me forever. Yes, I will betroth you to me in righteousness and in justice, in loving kindness and in compassion. So here's the bride, here's the marriage, here's the relationship, the betrothal here in the Old Testament. This was always God's desire. Again, Christianity didn't invent some completely new radical concept. This was something, part of something God wanted all along with his people. 23, I will sow her for myself in the land. I will also have compassion on her who had not obtained compassion. I will say to those who are not my people, you are my people. And they will say, you are my God. So there again, there's the Lord's unchanging goodness and faithfulness. And the surprise comes in chapter 3, verse 1. The Lord said to me, go again, love a woman who is loved by her husband, yet an adulteress, even as the Lord loves the sons of Israel, though they turn to other gods and love raisin cakes, these different things. So God's telling Hosea, get your wife, love her, even though she's been unfaithful, because I still love my people and I still desire them, even though they've been unfaithful. Beautiful picture here. Amazing. Just how much love does that take? Because how often in life, and even for ourselves in our human nature, someone wrongs us or burns us or betrays us, we're done. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Not going to let that happen again. It's kind of the idea here. The God who knows the worst about us, knows our failings and our shortcomings. He doesn't say our sin is okay. That sin needs to be addressed, but he always wants to restore the relationship. He's always seeking and desiring. He doesn't say, that's it, I'm done with it. He says, come, come. Yeah, we may have life's consequences as we deal with our choices, but Christ always says, come, come, let me restore, let me rebuild. So very important to understand God's character and nature has never changed. He's always desired this. Even while the sons of Ham are going off and doing these crazy things, conquering and establishing this nation of Egypt, even while nothing's good enough for Nimrod, as he's going on and now he's Pharaoh Narmer possibly, and going even into Egypt and bringing back tales of that, linking Egypt and Mesopotamia. Even still, God is saying, just come. First, let all that go. In chapter 4, verse 16, he talks about the realities of the relationship here. How true is this? Hosea 4:16, since Israel is stubborn like a stubborn heifer, can the Lord now pasture them like a lamb in a large field? Very great point here. As Israel's being resistant, they're not giving me anything to work with. If they're acting like a stubborn cow, I can't treat them and nurture them like a gentle lamb. So very important for us to understand how we come to our God. Skip down to chapter 6, first 3 verses. Beautiful encouragement for us. Come, let us return to the Lord, for he has torn us, but he will heal us. He has wounded us, but he will bandage us. He will revive us after 2 days. He will raise us up on the 3rd day, that we may live before him. So let us know. Let us press on to know the Lord. His going forth is as certain as the dawn, and he will come to us like the rain, like the spring rain, watering the earth. Here's a great rejoicing in the Lord's faithfulness and encouragement for all of us to come. Verse 6, very important verse, gets referred to in other passages. Hosea 6:6. For I delight in loyalty rather than sacrifice, and in the knowledge of God rather than burnt offerings. The thing with idolatry is you have rituals, you have sacraments and things like that. God's not looking for any of that. You have traditions. Some traditions are nice and have special meaning and everything like that. God says, I'm not looking for your religious trappings. I'm not looking for your idol rituals and all that stuff. I'm looking for loyalty. I'm looking for knowledge of me. I'm looking for that relationship. Anything we choose to do out of the relationship, great. But don't confuse religion with spirituality. Don't confuse ritual with life and service and relationship. And that's very key here, even again, here in the Old Testament. Let's skip down. Chapter 10, one verse, verse 12. The encouragement here through the Lord's prophet Isaiah. Again, in the face of all this adultery and idolatry. Hosea 10, verse 12. Sow with a view to righteousness. Reap in accordance with kindness. Break up your fallow ground, for it is time to seek the Lord until he comes to rain righteousness on you. So beautiful encouragement here. A farmer sows, he puts the seed in the ground with a purpose, with a vision, with a view towards something. There's a reason and that he's doing this. So the Lord is telling us to sow, to plant in our life, things in our life with a view to righteousness. Do things in our life, sow the things in our life with righteousness in mind. Reap, receive the results of that in accordance with kindness. So righteousness and kindness are very big themes in the Old Testament. Break up your fallow ground. I used to think fallow meant hard, so it needed to be broken up. Fallow just means unfruitful, not producing. So if we've got ground in our heart and our lives that's not bearing fruit, that's not producing, the encouragement here is break it up, turn it over, get it, prepare the soil so it can receive that sowing of the seed, and there can be a reaping that comes from that. Reap what you sow and all that stuff. Seek the Lord; He will rain that righteousness down on you. So a beautiful encouragement there. Look at the heart of the Lord in chapter 11, these first few verses. Here's what Old Testament God is saying about his people. Hosea 11:1. When Israel was a youth, I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son. The more they called them, the more they went from them. They kept sacrificing to the Baals, burning incense to idols. Yet it is I who taught Ephraim to walk. I took them in my arms, but they did not know that I healed them. I led them with cords of a man, with bonds of love. And I became to them as one who lifts the yoke from their jaws. And I bent down and fed them. Here's the Lord saying, look what a heart of compassion and love I have had for my children, even though they haven't seen it and haven't recognized it. I bent down from where I was to reach where they were, to feed them where they were at. Verse 8, how can I give you up, O Ephraim? How can I surrender you, O Israel? How can I make you like Admah? How can I treat you like Zeboim? Those are cities destroyed along with Sodom and Gomorrah. My heart is turned over within me. All my compassions are kindled. I will not execute my fierce anger. I will not destroy Ephraim again, for I am God and not man, the Holy One in your midst. Christ was the sinless one in our midst, the Holy One in our midst. I will not come in wrath. Though he could, he chooses not to. So closing chapter 12, one verse, and then one verse in verse 14. Hosea 12:6. Therefore, return to your God. Observe kindness and justice and wait for your God continue. Sounds an awful lot like another verse we like in Micah. Chapter 14, last verse, chapter 14, verse 4. Again, think of the idolatry, the adultery, and all that was going on with Hosea's example. This is the attitude of the Lord towards his people. Hosea 14, verse 4. I will heal their apostasy or their falling away. I will love them freely, for my anger has turned away from them. That is the desire of God towards his people. Thousands of years ago, that was the desire of Christ in calling his church. That's his desire for us today. While we see on one hand, the seekings of man and everywhere else that man goes, again, to take God off the table, anything's possible, anything's allowed, it's all good, it's a free-for-all. But you stick with the one true God who's been faithful throughout eternity. This is his desire for us. It's what he calls for us and brings us into, that we're blessed to be a part of today. So we'll close with that. Any final thoughts, comments, questions from anyone on anything from this morning? If not, go ahead and turn the services back over.